Congratulations on this album. I've had a chance to sit down and take a listen to it, and it's an absolutely amazing album. So, congratulations.
No, thank you so much.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
We are happy.
I wanted to go right back. I wanted to go back past your first album, and I was wondering what it was when you two first met that made you decide that you wanted to work together with such a special project.
Well, I guess that's Tom's answer because it was his initiative that started all this.
Yeah, I mean, I saw Vic back then, a young kid releasing piano covers of metal songs, I guess, and I saw him do a couple of the Evergrey songs, and immediately felt that he understood me, the music I'm trying to create, and also in terms of his timing and phrasing and sense of melody. So I basically just wrote him an email saying that we should make music together. It should sound like score music with vocals. Are you up for it? And he said yes. So
yeah, exactly. Once I successfully made sure that I wasn't being pranked, because I thought there's no way that Tom Englund of Evergrey is asking me to make music with him. This has to be a joke. But once I decided it wasn't a joke, yeah, I mean, it was a no-brainer for me because I have a deep kinship with Evergrey's music because it's been such a big part of my life for so much of my musical life, at least. And I think Tom could tell that in my playing, that we understood each other in some special way that is not to be taken for granted, because you can play with a lot of musicians who don't really understand you in quite that intimate musical way. And so there was something very special there, and I think it was a no-brainer for both of us that we had to follow this road wherever it would lead.
Tom, there's a lot of distance between you two where you live, like in different countries. Does that make the songwriting process easier or harder from your point of view?
I mean, on the first album, we flew Vic in here and recorded the grand piano where I live on the west coast of Sweden, and of course that has its cons because whatever we recorded, we were sort of stuck with. Had to go with. On the second album, we also was hit by this pandemic, of course, and that sort of forced us to find new ways to work because we couldn't meet up, So we started studying YouTube and found a way to work through Zoom with both of our studios hooked up so we can hear each other in real time and in full quality, which is it's been a great blessing in a sense that I can start my mornings with the things that Vic has recorded or wrote during the night, and then I add my vocals to it, or vice versa, which gives us sort of 16 hours per day instead of ordinary 8 or 10, which is great. So it's been good, to be honest.
Vic, go a little bit further into that songwriting process. What is it like for the two of you? Do you kind of discuss where you're heading with a track? Do you send Tom little bits that you've been working on and him send you bits that he's been working on? How does that process actually work?
Yeah, basically we start with musical excerpts, and it's not always from me. Tom comes up with musical ideas as well that are really, really great, and we kind of massage things into a song with the vocals entering the process quite early, which I think is different than the way a lot of people in metal music typically write music, where very often the vocals are slapped on top of fully fleshed out instrumentals. But for us, the vocals enter quite soon, which is really important because the vocals are so important, not just the melodies and the lyrics, but the vibes and the tones. It all plays together, and it has to make a potent, cohesive song from the get-go. So we start very early with that. Typically, the instrumental demos will become more and more fleshed out with different instrumental layers, different synthesizer, string approaches, percussion, beat sort of stuff as the vocals are being added. And we have this free-flowing back and forth of ideas, and we're always, on Zoom trying stuff together. I'll walk over to my synth and I'll try something and we'll hear it. And Tom, on his end, will record a vocal and we'll try it and we'll hear it and evaluate it and improve it in real time. So really, together, pretty much in real time, we are coaxing this song into life.
Tom, it's such an amazing album. Like I said before, it's so cinematic and it feels like a dreamscape. What kind of things were influencing both of you when you sat down to work on this album?
I mean, boring answer, but life.
Yeah.
We don't need to run into the woods and find Dungeons and Dragons or whatever for us to be inspired. We have enough darkness of our own, I guess. So I think, and I think that's also one of the key elements in Silent Skies, is that we have an understanding of having issues with mental health and working too hard and working ourselves to the bone, and all of these things come together and sort of makes just what Vic said, a cohesive, coherent idea of what we are supposed to do with Silent Skies. And I think that sets the foundation and makes the understanding of each other, it's a great thing.
Yeah. Tom, did the pandemic also kind of inspire you in a way as well? I mean, a lot of people have said here in Australia that this is some of the darkest times that a lot of us have lived in. I know here in Melbourne, we were in lockdown for nearly 250 days of the last 2 years, and suicide's been the highest it's ever been in our country. Was that something that you were using with your music as well, as the world reflected on their own lives?
I wouldn't say, not for me specifically. I think quite the opposite, because for me it was also a time for reflection and a time where I've had time to reflect on my music and on myself. And also, I mean, usually when I make an album, I make the album, then I'm touring, then I make the album, then I'm touring, So now I've had a chance to sit down and really just make music. And I mean, the same goes for Vikram. We've been blessed with a lot of time, I guess. We've made so much other music as well together. We make music for, we're hired by a video game company called Saber Interactive that make big ass games, so we do that too. So for us, it's been more a blessing than a curse, to be honest. But yeah, it is dark times. I wouldn't say it's darker than what it is usually for me, but yeah.
Yeah.
It's a time where I think people, whether it's in a dark way or in a positive way, people are having more time to reflect, as Tom said, and really that's what this music is. It's music for reflection. It doesn't have to be music for despair. It's music ultimately for healing, and this is a perfect time for that.
And so for both of you, I guess we'll start with you, Vic. What's it like there now for you with the pandemic? Is things starting to open back up? Are you able to get back out and do shows and things like that?
I'm in a kind of interesting perspective within the music world, I suppose, where touring was never really a big part of my musical life. I've always been a composer and a producer working at home, and I'm in like 5 bands at the moment, but none of them are very, are road warriors or anything like that. So it's kind of business as usual, except from a production standpoint, because all the bands are at home writing and recording, I kind of have had more work in the last 2 years than I had at any point prior. And as Tom said, we have so much time to compose, he and I, so we've taken on all these other projects outside of the albums that we make with Silent Skies. So it's been fruitful and productive, mixed with a healthy dose of societal weirdness, because this is a very strange time.
Yeah. Tom, how about for you? What is it like for you there in Sweden now? Is things starting to open back up and you've got a little bit more freedom?
Well, the thing is, Sweden got so much shit for using our strategy in the pandemic, and we never closed down.
Yep.
And now we're on the bottom of the. We have the least numbers rising in terms of illness or deaths or hospitalization, and it proves that our strategy has been the best. With that said, we're doing shows now this weekend, for instance, with Evergrey. We're doing 2 shows in the 2 biggest cities of Sweden, Stockholm and Malmö. But everybody has to bring their COVID passes, So
Yep.
excuse me, prove that they are fully vaccinated. And, yeah, but other than that, it's been pretty much the same. Which I've yeah, you couldn't go to bars for a while, but I don't do that much anyway, So
Yeah.
It's been, as I said, it sounds weird, but all the bad things aside, it's been a great time for me personally. So
Yeah. Talking of that time, Vic, tell us a little bit about the video game projects that you and Tom have been working on together, and what that has been like working out music for video games.
Sure. I mean, to start with, I've been a fan of video game music as long as I've been a fan of any other music, if not prior. So video game music has always been something that's interested me. I went to college for film scoring, which is many of the similar skills as video game scoring. So it's always been on my mind, and I've never really had the opportunity, whether it's the time or the right person contacting me to work on it. And by a wonderful coincidence, Tom, has been working on getting into working for media as well, and it was through him that we landed this opportunity to work with Saber Interactive, and it's been really different for both of us, because both of us in our, musical day jobs, we invest so much of our souls into making the most, heartfelt music that sometimes can be a little bit painful to bring into fruition, just because it's so earnest and so honest and so personal and real for both of us. And video game music is ultimately functional music. It's there to serve a purpose, to be part of the game mechanics. And while, I don't do anything without heart, it's not quite the same level of, bringing your souls and wearing it on your sleeve kind of thing. It's a lot more functional, and it's focused on making, I guess, things that sound cool at the end of the day. It's supposed to sound cool. It's supposed to capture your attention in different ways than something that is just heartbreaking. So we've taken that as a chance to really explore a lot of things that we don't get to do in other projects. We experiment even more with sound design, and Tom and I both are sitting in our studios making these wacky and wonderful soundscapes. And I think it's been a big learning experience for both of us, because through the course of doing that, we learned so many techniques that we can then bring into our other, heart projects, as it were.
Yeah. Tom, what sparked that initial interest for you to get involved with composing for video games? Was there one moment that kind of really called you to that?
No, but I'm pretty much the same answer as Vic. I got into video game music before I got into real music, in a sense.
Yeah.
if there's such a thing. But it's a big ass company called Embracer Group in Sweden that owns a lot of the huge video games companies in the world. So I just sent them an email where I said, hey, dude, I'm this guy. I do this and this. I have a great partner. We do music, and we want to do music for your games. And then they introduced us. I guess they were fans of Evergrey. So they introduced us to the Saber people. And that it was as easy as that. But as the Saber people said, that if you would have sent us anything on any other day, or I would have looked at my email any other hour, you would never have gotten in, So we were just very lucky. And of course we could bring the goods, which we are very good at, So yeah, it's just great. And just as Vic said, not having to invest your heart, but be rather mechanical about music is also something that brings me a lot of joy, but also makes me a better musician in terms of understanding what is needed for a project. That can translate into songwriting for Silent Skies or Evergrey or Redemption that we are also in. So yeah.
Definitely. Now, bringing it back to the album, of course, we're all enjoying the first single on our show at the moment, but we're a little while off before we actually get the album. But because we are running out of time, what would you like to say to everybody out there about not only the first single, but about the album itself? Is there something you would like to say before people go out there and start pre-ordering a copy of Nectar?
Yeah, I mean, if I can start, I think that you should dare to take the leap to listen to something that is less of metal, because what we think Silent Skies is that we just took away the heavy drums and the heavy guitars. Outside of that, it's just as heavy, just as brooding, just as dark, even darker, So it's we want to be a sort of a bridge in between that kind of music that we play on a daily basis more, and are more famous for, and bring people into this and understand this world of us as well. That would be lovely.
Definitely. And
yeah,
Vic,
exactly right.
Well, Tom, Vic, thank you so much for taking the time to chat to us tonight. It's been an absolute